Kip, what's up, brother? Great to see you. Still looks like you're on your, I was gonna say vacation, but I think that's what I thought it was originally. But you guys actually, what do? You travel for a couple of months every year, a month or two, or what is it?
Yeah, I mean, we probably travel a little too much anyway, but this is our plan every year to
Yeah.
take our kids, move somewhere temporarily for a short period of time, experience another culture, and build up to it. Asia's been having the girls learn French for months leading up to this trip, and it's I don't know, it just makes it great. It's super great.
Yeah. That's cool. Right on,
Yeah,
man. Well, I'm glad we could still do this podcast because you and I have talked about it. It's good fuel for us for getting through the week and thinking about things that there were some really good questions today that I saw, and it gets us thinking about
yeah,
things that, at least for me, I don't always consider so readily. So that's part of the reason I enjoy having these conversations.
yeah. Me too. Me too. Always, as always. In fact, I agree. I looked over some of these questions. I'm like, yeah, these
Yeah,
are
they're
good
pretty
ones. And
solid.
even last week were great. Yeah.
Yeah, they were good
So
too. Yeah, quality of questions is improving. One quick announcement, I didn't mention this before we got started, Kip, is really, guys, right now, if you would, if you're ever on YouTube, I would suggest and encourage and ask that you head over to YouTube and you follow us over there. It's done really well on YouTube lately. Things are starting to pick up, and I see a lot of momentum over there. I still do feel like our accounts get throttled. You know, if we look at our accounts, we have on YouTube just under 300,000. So let's hit that 300,000 mark. And if you look at other channels that have 300,000 subscribers, and these are all organic subscribers, this is nothing I paid for. I mean, this is something we've built over 8 years, but our views are so low relative to, and I'm always skeptical and cautious of like saying, well, we're being shadow banned because that's what everybody
yeah.
says. And it kind of sounds like whining, frankly, but also there's some gimmicks being played. And I know there is because I've talked with men who run very, very successful YouTube accounts, and they've gone through the analytics, the back end analytics of our account, and have said, yeah, there's some shenanigans taking place
Things aren't
here.
adding up.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, for
So,
sure.
anyways, we're going to keep playing the game. A lot of times people will say, well, just don't be on there. No, we are going to be on there because we can reach as many people as we do, but there's other avenues as well. So there's two things that we can do. We can retreat and withdraw and say, well, I'm not going to play on their playground because there's these rules, or I'm going to play on that playground by their rules because it's their playground. But I'm also going to see what else is available. So I just want to flood everything and do everything we can to get this message of restoring and reclaiming masculinity out to the masses.
Totally. Totally. And you get to see Ryan's pretty face and the new backdrop.
That's a bonus. I mean, that's
So
just
come
that's
on.
just gravy right there. You know, guys, consider yourselves fortunate.
I,
So
in hindsight, someone made that comment. I think I because every so often, well, actually, that's how I know. I think that's my like cheap way to determine how that episode did is pretty much from YouTube, right? Because you have podcast downloads, and every so often we go over those, but not too often. So I'll hop onto YouTube and just kind of, oh, hey, that one had higher
it's
success
it's not a
sometimes.
good indicator.
Yeah, it's all I got, man. Unless
I know, but
unless you're gonna
I'll
throw
send
numbers
you
my
the
way
other. I
weekly.
can get you the I can get you the login credentials, or get yourself your own credentials so you can go in and pour over the
Well,
data.
regardless, every so often I'll see comments on there, and YouTube's brutal already, but it was really funny. Someone made a comment, I think last week, saying this podcast is just valuable to watch just to see Ryan's gorgeous face. I think that was like the extent
I
of the
think that's
comment.
probably
So
the most true comment that was ever made on YouTube. You know, what's interesting is if you look at the analytics and the demographics of our audiences, you can see across different
yeah,
platforms, whether it's Instagram or Apple Podcasts or other podcast players or Twitter. And it's usually if it's usually about 85% men, roughly 15% women. On YouTube, it's 85% women. So I don't know. Maybe they just want to see our face, and they
yeah.
just like, it's not really 85% women.
I was gonna say, is it really?
No, it's not really
I was totally
85% women.
shocked.
I just thought maybe the
And
women
in
wanted to
fact,
see our faces, but I don't think that's the
I mean,
case.
generally speaking, YouTube is a male's platform too. That's even interesting. I'm sure you've
Right.
heard those statistics that the majority of people that actually watch YouTube aren't men. Women rarely utilize YouTube. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually pulling up the statistics while
No,
you're.
you're not. You're pulling up the comment about you being
I
handsome. You
am
just want to screenshot that really quick.
absolutely. Let me get that real quick before YouTube takes that one down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you go ahead and get into it, and I'm going to
Yeah.
pull this up while you're doing that because now I'm curious about the demographics over here. I don't know if I can
Yeah.
tell. Oh yeah, here we go.
Hey, sounds
So
good.
here
Okay.
it is. So we want to take a guess. What percentage of our audience on YouTube is male?
I bet it's like 90.
It's higher. It's 94%. 94%
94%.
male. You know what's interesting? It's 94.1% male, 5.9% female. There's like that's accounts for everybody. So anybody who listens to our podcast believes in male and female. Pretty much is what that's telling me. Because there's no
Yeah.
other, there's no unspecified or there's no other in here.
No
It's just male or
transformers.
female.
Yeah.
There's no other little weird things. Also,
Yeah.
the biggest demographic. This is interesting. What do you want to say as far as the demographic of age? What do you think is the biggest 10-year age demographic for listeners for our podcast?
20 to 35-year-olds.
That's pretty good. So they do it in increments of 25 to 35, 35 to 45. So
Okay.
25 to 35 years old, 30% of our audience. 35 to 45 is 28% of our audience. So almost 60% of our audience is between the ages of 25 to 45 years old, and 95% of them are male. Interesting.
Yeah.
It makes sense, right? That's who we're talking to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It
Totally.
just tells
All right,
me
we're
that
gonna
men
feel
are starving for this kind of information. Young men, aspiring, ambitious, motivated men are itching for this type of information to apply in their lives to better their families, better themselves, better their businesses, better their bank accounts. This is the information guys are after. And fortunately, we were able to stumble into that 8.5 years ago when we started this thing.
Yeah. Well played.
All right, let's
okay,
get to it.
We're going to field questions from the Iron Council today. To learn more about the Iron Council, go to ordervan.com/Iron Council. We'll keep you updated when we open enrollment. The best way to do that, you can sign up for the newsletter, but the other way is pretty much just stay connected. So connect with Mr. Mickler on Instagram and Twitter at Ryan Mickler. All right. I had 2 questions from last week. If you're okay, let's just inject those really quick and then jump to this week's questions. Okay.
Yep, let's do it.
Sean Ahern, I know both of you read a lot of books, especially the monthly topics in the Iron Council. Is there a specific book or novel you revisit once a year for the enjoyment that it brings?
For Sean, if I remember correctly, the last question we answered last week was books about mental or emotional health. And I think we said, in fact,
As
I know I said As a Man Thinketh and Man's Search for Meaning. Those are 2 books that I read pretty regularly. Another one that I read pretty often is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, who's been a multiple guest appearance on our podcast. That's a good one. I read The Road by what is it? Cormac McCarthy. Is that right? You guys I'm slaughtering that. But The Road is really good about a father-son combo in a post-apocalyptic era trying to survive. That's really good. I haven't read that one multiple times. I only bring that one up because I recently read it and it was really, really good. So
and it was
if you haven't read that
for you.
Yeah, entertaining, and the lessons learned in there about the love between a father and a son. I mean, just powerful stuff. Yeah, Cormac McCarthy, and he's written other books. Blood Meridian is one. No Country for Old Men is his.
That's a great book.
Yeah, there's some others as well, but The Road is really, really good. And also on that note, that's one thing I'm trying to infuse more into my life is more fiction. If you would have asked me this question 5, 6 years ago, even maybe 2 years ago, all of it's going to be self-help.
It's a waste of time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And now I don't think it is. It's actually it's a really good way for me to unwind, for me to even learn things that I wouldn't have considered otherwise. Jack Carr's series with the James Reese thrillers are really, really good. I would highly recommend that. We just had a guest come on, Remy Adeleke, with his newest book called, why am I forgetting? Chameleon. So, oh, and then also I just got a book in the mail from Jim Shockey, the hunter that a lot of you guys know as hunters. He's got, I think it's called Call Me Hunter, and it's a fiction, it's a fiction book. So a lot of these authors are actually beginning to migrate more into fictional work for a reason, and a lot of them are really, really good at entertaining.
Yeah, that's great. Like good learning books that I retouch, As a Man Thinketh. I've read that multiple times over and over. It's probably because it's also a short book. It's a
So
short
easy.
read,
Same
but
as the War of Art, and these are simple reads.
yeah. Four Agreements. I've read that book numerous times,
Don
usually on
Miguel
a
Ruiz.
run. Yeah. But I'm a huge fan of Dan Brown. I just love his books. So I've literally read every single Dan Brown book, and I
Is
probably
he the
read
Da
them
Vinci Code?
all
Like, did he
multiple
do Da
times.
Vinci Code? And
Yeah.
is that him? What he's best known
Yeah.
for? Okay,
Angels
yeah,
and Demons. Yeah,
yep.
those books. So I love those books, and I'm a nerd. So sometimes I'll listen to like a Star Wars book or Harry Potter books.
I knew you were
Yeah.
gonna say that. You are a nerd. Probably
They,
that
I
and Twilight.
am.
You probably read Twilight too, I bet.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did. I've been to your house, Kip. I
I
saw it
think you
up
have
there
to
on the
be a
mantle.
female nerd to enjoy Twilight. I
No,
don't think
I
any
saw it
dude
up
actually
there.
enjoyed those books.
Guys, don't let Kip fool you. Actually, I think in one of our YouTube
Uh,
videos, he accidentally left it up behind him and he
yeah.
forgot to take the Twilight series down before he hit record. So it's in there. You got to dig through it a little bit.
Yeah, it was. I was a guest on a geek podcast, so I just inject that nerd every so often when needed.
What's the
Good stuff.
appropriate, the politically correct term? Is it geek or nerd or I don't, there's another one. There's got to be more in there
When
too.
I was in college and I was nerding out and like hacking and utilizing Linux is cool, and you're like geeking, geek was the correct cool term. You
So
would never
geek
call
is
yourself a
okay.
nerd. It was a geek. Yeah, I don't know if
Okay.
that's evolved.
I don't know. Yeah,
But
I don't know either. I've never
in
been in that
in
category, so
my
I don't know.
geeky days, yeah. Let's talk distros of Linux. All the nerds right now are all getting excited.
I don't even know what you're saying right now. So that
You
just
know,
goes
our
to show you where I
YouTube
am on the
count just went
geek
up.
quotient.
All
All right.
right.
What else? What's
Next
next?
question. Cody Bruner. My wife and I have decided to end our marriage. Well, let me back up and say I ended it. And now we are sorting through the steps of what's next. Throughout this marriage, my first, I have struggled so much with being selfish versus honoring my boundaries. They were non-existent for the most part. What advice would you give guys on how to determine when it is selfish and when it is a boundary? Let me elaborate in saying I don't believe that a boundary is inherently selfish, but can be seen that way by other parties. I'm struggling with making that distinction internally.
Well, I think I don't really particularly agree with the premise of the question. And the premise is that selfishness is negative. That's the undertone of this question. But why is it negative?
Yeah. Like you have to stay away from selfishness, otherwise you're in the wrong.
Yeah. Why is it
that.
negative to be selfish? Now, if it comes at the expense of other people, or it's excessive, or you're not serving other people and you're not participating in your family dynamic or business or culture, yeah, I think it could be a problem, but you could say that about anything. So I think we need to remove the stigma of selfishness being somewhat of a negative. It really isn't. And a boundary can be selfish. Boundaries typically are. You know, if, for example, your ex-wife is communicating with you in a certain way, and I don't want to make assumptions about why you guys are not married anymore because I don't know. But if she's not communicating with you in a respectful way, and you don't like that, that is selfish because you don't appreciate being talked to that way. And it's also a boundary. So it can be both. And boundaries are typically selfish. I have this boundary in place because I don't like the way that your behavior or your communication makes me feel. And therefore, I'm putting this boundary up so you don't step over it into my space, mental, emotional, physical space. So I don't think it's wrong. What do you think about that? Do you think it's inherently negative to be selfish? What are your thoughts, Kip?
No, I totally agree with you. In fact, I love that distinction. I don't think I would have made that distinction that like we do that we assume that if it's selfish, it's negative. And then we give grace of like, oh, well, you can be a little selfish or it's okay to be selfish sometimes. It's like, well, no, just it's about the priority of things. And are you putting yourself before certain things? too much, right? What's the impact of your selfishness, if you want to use that term?
Yeah.
And shouldn't we all be, right? Shouldn't our happiness be self-derived and not be dependent on others? Shouldn't we care about, ourselves and purposely seek out things that find enjoyment and fulfillment in our lives? Like, those are all forms of being selfish. And I
Yeah.
don't see anything wrong with any of them. Yeah,
And
I like that.
and also you can't make decisions in a vacuum in life. If you do something
Yeah.
positively in one aspect, it's going to spill over into positivity in another aspect. So I wrote this down here, and this is a little alliteration here, but selfishness leads to selflessness. And let me explain what I mean. If you're a little bit selfish, well, I'm not even going to say a little bit. If you're a healthy selfishness, we'll say that. If it's
Yeah.
healthy, then it's going to lead to selflessness. For example, if you take time out of your day and you do it appropriately, I'm not saying like blow up your day because you want to go to the gym, for example, or step
Yeah. You
all over
still have
other people's
responsibilities and
priorities. Like, yeah,
yeah.
right. So get up an hour earlier before everybody else is up and get your butt into the gym. That's selfish, but it's not really impacting anybody negatively because you're doing it while everybody else is asleep. But what's nice about that is you tell me this. Can a man who is 10% body fat, is he going to be just generally, okay, I'm just speaking in broad generalities here. Like, you guys are capable of discernment when I say this, but can a man who's 10% body fat serve his family and his business more effectively than somebody who's 35% body fat? Everything else being equal. Of course he can. So is it selfish to take an hour out of your day to go into the gym and to eat right and to make sure that you're making these sacrifices? Of course, it's a beautiful thing because now you have the energy and you have the mental stamina and you have the focus and the clarity and the innovation to be able to serve your family, to be able to show up more powerfully for your clients, to be able to serve your employer. Like, it's just better that way. So if it's healthy selfishness, it can lead to selflessness. And here's the last point that I'll make. I've always thought about when does a male become a man? Is it an age thing? Is it a maturity thing? Like, at what point would we consider a male no longer to be a boy or an adolescent, but to be a man? And I think after spending about 9 years thinking about this question, it's when he has the capacity to not only serve himself, but then to turn his abundance and his prosperity and wealth out for the benefit of other people. So if I'm broke and all I'm thinking about is like making my bills, and I don't have any money to give to charity, and I don't have the time to be able to donate to charitable organizations or spend time with my family, if I'm just worried about me and mine because I don't have the capacity to take care of myself, then I'm not being manly. If, on the other hand, I'm making enough money in abundance that I can provide for myself, and also I can provide for my children, and also I can donate time to coach sports teams, and also I can give to charity, then I think we would all of us agree that that person is more of a man because he's learned how to harness raw resources, take care of himself, and then turn those things outward.
In the spirit of Cody's question, maybe let me ask it this way. Is there an area where boundaries are too much, where we put too much boundaries in relationships, and that comes across, some would flag it as being selfish, or it's just negative and it doesn't serve him as much? And where does he lay that down, right? Where's that balance, or how does he check himself to know that, like, there's not enough give and take, right? Where he's just like boundary, my way. And it's really, coming across in a negative impact in his relationship.
Yeah, I think it can, where boundaries can be taken too far, can be taken to the extreme. And what I wrote down here as you were asking that question is, are they relevant? Because I think it's easy to set up a bunch of arbitrary boundaries. So a relevant boundary might be with your wife, for example, might be, hey, hun, you're not going to spend unnecessary amounts of money, and here's the budget, and we're going to work together to be able to create the solutions to these problems, and we're going to make sure cash flow is right, but you're not going to spend more than we have. Like for me, that's a hard boundary. And if you
Yeah.
continually and habitually break and cross that boundary, we're going to have some serious, serious complications in our relationship. And that's important
Yeah.
to me because as a man, it's my job to provide for my family. It's my job to make sure financially the mortgage gets paid and there's enough money for food on the table and there's a little bit left over to be able to go on vacations or trips or spend on who knows what. But if you continue to break that boundary and cross that, that's an issue. Maybe on a more silly level, because I can't really think of anything, but I've seen guys that make up all sorts of rules, some of which are uncommunicated rules about nothing and everything, about how the grass needs to be mowed or how the house needs to be kept and how the car needs to be
Yeah.
parked in the garage. It's like, is that really a boundary or is that just something you'd like? And if it's something
Yeah.
you'd like, for example, like let's say you come home from a long day and there's a certain way you like the house to be kept. Like if your wife stays at home and she's the homemaker and she's taking care of the kids, I think that's a reasonable expectation. I go out and I do this work and your job is to be here because we've agreed on it. Like I think it's reasonable to expect that the house is going to be kept well. That's your job, right? That's the dynamic of
Yeah.
our relationship. Is that a boundary? No, it's not a boundary, but it's something that I think should be communicated so that you understand what her day's like. Because you know what, if little Timmy has to go to the dentist and then she's chauffeuring all the kids all over the place every day, like we don't see that stuff. And so like, why isn't dinner made? Why isn't the house clean? It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Maybe she had other things going on throughout the day that you're not aware of. So I think there's things we'd like to have done a certain way, and those should be communicated. I'm not saying they shouldn't. And then there's boundaries which are hard and fast. Like you will not cross this boundary, and this is where I draw the line in the sand.
Yeah. One of the distinctions that you made that I think is spot on is what was the intent behind the boundary, right? So as Cody looks at his boundary, it's like, well, why this one? Is it so you can serve your family better? Is it so your family can be safe? Is it better for the relationship? Or is it like control? This is the way I like it. And now you're just flexing some superiority over someone else for some worthless reason, right? So connecting to the intent is one of the key things that I picked up from what you said.
Yeah, I think so. I also think a lot like we hear from a Christian perspective is you will be judged by the same scrutiny that you judge others. And
Yeah.
and the reason I bring that up is with regards to boundaries and preferences, we'll call them. Like a preference would
Yep.
be like, I like to have the house cleaned like this. That's a preference. That's not a boundary.
Yeah. It's an ask, maybe. Yeah.
You should honor her preferences as well, right? So if you're asking her to, can you flip that mirror around and say honestly that you're willing to do that for her? I know I wasn't always in my marriage, and I won't say that's the downfall, but you add that to other things in the relationship and it causes problems. I have high
Yeah.
expectations and preferences. I want those things to be honored. But if I examine it, was I really willing to do the same for her? And the answer is no, not as much as I should have.
Yeah. Yeah. Real quick, nerdy psychology thing. So it's called the fundamental attribution error. And what it is we attribute other people's shortcomings or lack of performance per se to their character. But when it comes to us, we hold on to the reasons, right? So it's like, well, am I delivering? Well, not probably where I should, but job is tough, and and I got this and this and that and that. But when it comes to my judgments towards her, well, you know what I mean? It's because she's this way, right? And and we don't attribute any other possible variables into our judgment towards others.
There's a quote that I heard, and Ben Shapiro says this quite often, and I don't think it's his quote. I think he's quoting somebody else. He says, "Never attribute to maliciousness what should be attributed to ignorance or stupidity," I think is what he says.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
that's typically the truth is that,
So true.
so we'll go back to your spouse. Like she's not doing the house out of like not the way you like, out of malicious intent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like she's
I'm
not
gonna
out to
really
get you.
piss him off today.
Right.
Yeah.
She doesn't even have enough free time in her day to think about how she can get at you. Okay. Like you're not as important as you think you are. And so, and
Yeah.
I won't say it's stupidity either, because it's certainly not that,
Yeah.
but it could be
But it's
ignorance.
a form of ignorance.
It's
Yeah. It's
ignorance.
just,
And look, when
yeah.
we hear ignorance, if I say, Kip, you're ignorant, okay, that sounds like an insult. But if I say, but it is kind of insulting in that manner. But the definition of ignorance is just not knowing. It's
Yeah. It's
literally
like
just it's
unaware. Yeah.
yeah, it's just not knowing.
Yeah.
Stupidity is knowing but doing something dumb, right? Doing something different.
Yeah.
That's stupidity. Ignorance is I just don't know. So how do you address ignorance? By talking about it. Hey, hun, you
Yeah.
know, I've noticed that the house is a certain way when I get home, and man, it really causes me a lot of stress when I get home when I see, you know, the books and toys and everything all laying out, and it's just really nice to come home to a straight house, but maybe I don't understand the full picture. Can you help me understand?
Hmm.
And then she's like, oh yeah, well, we were busy today and this and that. If it's an anomaly, I wouldn't even worry about it. But if it's a constant thing, like try to figure out her day. Like, well, okay, tell me what's going on. How can I help? What can we do?
Yeah.
But it's typically just uncommunicated preferences, like I talked about earlier.
Yeah. With a bunch of covert contracts and
Yeah.
frustrations and stonewalling,
Yeah.
right? Instead.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Charles Phillips. My girlfriend suffers from anger issues stemming from anxiety. Lately has gotten better, but from the flare-ups are worse. How can a man best lead a loved one through their anger and anxiety issues? Therapy is ongoing to address the issue long-term, but more in the moment is where I struggle.
I'm going to say something that's controversial right now. She's your girlfriend. And I don't know how long you guys have been together. I don't know if there's kids in the mix. Like, I don't know the details. But without knowing the details, I want to tell you she's your girlfriend. I hope you understand what I'm saying when I say that. If I need to be a little bit more clear, let me say it this way. Are you sure you want to commit forever to this person? And that might be controversial. People might not like what I have to say, but you know what? This is going to impact your life. This is going to be tough. If she's angry now and she's in therapy now and she's dealing with these issues now, unless something drastic changes, and maybe it does, maybe she has a growth mindset. And if she does, great. Like, see if it improves and see what you can do to help. But if it's been ongoing for years and years and she's always dealt with this, you have to ask yourself at this point, before you pop that ring on her finger, is this the game I'm willing to, like, is this the field I want to play on? Yeah. You agree with that, Kip, or disagree? And we'll get into some more details, but what do you think about that?
No, I totally agree. I mean, one thing's for sure, if you're fighting and things are tough, and trust me, people have this thought that they think, oh, well, when we get married, it'll be better because I don't know, some elusive pipe dream idea that things are going to get easier. They're not going to get easier. Guaranteed. They are going to get more difficult. So now, hey, if you're willing to commit, right? But just be very clear on what you're committing to, and that the probability is going to get more difficult for sure.
I mean, we have to address the elephant in the room. I mean, if we're like, we say we're here to serve men. And if we're here to serve men, then you really have to ask yourself, is this the game I want to play? If it is,
well, and
all right.
Go ahead. And think about this, Ryan. You know this as much as I know. We could probably say most difficulties in marriages are the unfinished baggage that both people bring into the marriage, project on their spouse, and then they spend the rest of their marriage dealing with that.
Right.
So choose someone that has dealt with some of it or has minimal amount of things to bring to the table, and you do the same so you can serve your spouse in the most appropriate way possible.
Right.
But those are the hardships you're going to experience, is all the trauma, anxiety, depression, stories, whatever you want to call them, from their childhood and their upbringing. And it's going to be thrown and projected on you in a very unfair way. And that's what marriage is.
And also, I think it should also be that you guys talk about what your problems are. Like that's a deal breaker for me. Yeah. We talk about a boundary. If either one of us are unwilling or unable to communicate with each other, I'm not interested in that relationship. So I think you should ask yourself what your boundaries are. Nothing's possible. And, you know, look, what if we kick all of our problems under the rug for a while. Like we could do that. I could do that. I'm mature enough to do that.
Yeah.
Like anybody I would date is mature enough to do that. But that's not what I want. Like I want to address it early and
Yeah.
often so that we can come to some mutual conclusions on the things that we might be struggling with. Because it is going to be a struggle. There's no perfect woman out there. There's no perfect man out there. There's going to be a struggle. Okay, so what can you do to address these anger issues? I think going to
Yeah.
therapy, even letting her do her personal therapy, but I even think doing something together would be valuable. And I'm not saying in exchange or to replace her personal therapy, she needs that. But I would go actually if therapy is proven to be valuable, I would try to do something together, maybe with another therapist, because that might give you some tools, right? So if I've got a tool or I've got a project that I'm working on, I'm building a bed for my daughter right now. So it's, you know, it's almost done. I've got 80, 90% of it done. And this weekend I was putting some supporting brackets and things like that on it. And I needed to make some certain cuts. Well, I didn't have the saw that I needed to make those cuts. So I went to Home Depot and I bought the miter saw that I needed, made the cuts easy, easy, right? Easy to get it done when you have the right tools.
Yeah.
Now
And a miter saw is awesome.
there's another way I could have done it. I could have just drawn it on there and eyeballed it and sawed it with like a hand saw. I could have got a miter box, which improves it a little bit, but still I got to saw with my hand. Like there's other things I can do, but I have the best tool now, which is the miter saw. That's the tool for the job. You might not have the tool for the job. You need to expand your toolbox because you can't build the bunk bed if you don't have the right tools. You can't have a thriving marriage if you don't have the right tools. You can't work her through anger issues if you don't have access to the right tools. You can bang your head against the wall and you can do everything you think you're supposed to do, but if you don't have the right tools, it's not going to work. And so you need somebody to introduce you to these tools. That might be a therapist. Now, because you have the tools, maybe it's different communication styles, maybe it's activities, maybe it's learning to give her some space or some margins so she can focus. Maybe it's how you respond to her when she is angry. If there's tools that you can learn, I would want to know what those things were. I don't have those tools to give to you, but there are people out there who are qualified, and you need to seek those qualified people. To use our analogy about Home Depot, if I need a miter saw, but I go to Bath and Body, then I'm not going to be able to get my miter saw at Bath and Body. What am I going to do? Like, cut it with like hack it with a pillow? Okay, so you need to go to the right place to get the right tool, and then you can perform what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Totally. And in the spirit of the tool analogy, make sure that you can deliver on the tool, right? Because that's the other thing is like most suffering exists where? In our interpretation, right? And so one of the best things you can do, Charles, is make sure that when those flare-ups occur, that you're not reacting to them, right? That your suffering isn't like, oh my gosh, her anxiety is horrible because I'm now reacting based upon her, you know, her flare up and what it means. And now, you know, I'm feeding the fire. So, and that's what's super tough about this. But make sure that you're not adding to the fire and adding to the problem based upon how you're reacting.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever been around somebody who you're like, man, I just really feel good when I'm around that person?
Totally. And I can think of people that I'm around where it's exhausting to be
Yo, for
around.
sure.
And it's
Yeah.
just, it's too much.
Yeah.
It's like depressing. Yeah.
So we as
Yeah.
men, I think, should be the first, right? And we've heard this term,
Yeah.
maybe you have, I've heard it a lot, is, and I didn't know what it meant. It took me a while to interpret it, but hold space. This
Mhm.
concept of holding space. You know, women tend to be a little bit more susceptible. That's probably not the right word. A little bit more sensitive to their emotional decision making process, right? And because of that, you're going to see generally, but you're going to see a lot more spikes, peaks, up and downs, peaks and valleys, right?
Yeah.
And our job as men is not to be emotionless. I'm not saying that. But if you can hold the space, then in those highs, you can bring her back down to earth. In the lows, you can bring her back out of that pit that she might be in. But you can't do that if you're not on neutral ground. You can't do that if
Yeah.
you're not holding the space. And I'm not saying allow yourself to be a victim either. I'm not saying like if she's in an irate, you know, rage that you have to take it and listen to all the, her berate you or yell at you or call you names or profanity. I'm not saying that at all. But if she's upset, you can be an environment, a container where it's like, okay, be upset, hon. What's going on? How you feeling? What can I help you with? These are things I wish I would have done better. But that idea of holding space is a valuable one.
Yeah. Greg Cleaver, moving more into leadership, I've given more thought into the important qualities to grow to embody the essence of leadership in myself. I believe the most important quality of an effective leader is to take initiative, to be the first to live and act as an example of anything you would as those whom you lead. I'm curious what your thoughts are about what you both feel are the hallmark traits of a vital and effective leader that I might be missing here. I realize my thoughts might be a bit vague, but I was attempting to span the overall situation.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I saw this one and I don't want to give a cop-out answer, but I've tried to look at this a little differently than just giving you a laundry list of items that you should do. We can do that. And maybe we'll get to some of those points, but here's what I would suggest is that the quality traits of a leader are the ones that he doesn't currently possess. Like that's the most important quality a leader can develop, the one he doesn't possess. Right? Like for example, I don't have any issue with initiative. Greg, you said initiative is the most important. So does that mean I can check leader off the box? I have no problem with initiative. I have no problem with motivation, zero problem with drive. You know what I do have a problem with? Empathy. So what's the most important leadership characteristic I can develop? It's not initiative. I already have that. It's empathy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think if you really want to be a leader, there isn't like do these 10 things. There's things you're already good at, which is probably why you're in a leadership capability. And look, with Greg, I mean, I see him in the IRC. I see him giving his comments and sharing his insights. He's a leader, man. People follow him. I listen to him. I'm inspired by him. The way he communicates, the message he shares, there's credibility. There's weight behind it. I see it.
Yeah.
So you're already in that position. And now what we should be identifying as leaders is what can I do to be better? Like what room for improvement do I have? So it's the one you don't have. Well, let's give a couple of items, but I would like to know if you would add anything else to what I just said, Kip.
Yeah. It's an interesting school of thought, right? So there's some evidence and it's not in contradiction to what you just said, but it's like a different angle of this, that leaders should take what they're good at and become extraordinary in them. And the reason why is because there's already a natural talent, right? And that the idea that when you're extraordinary in key elements, those end up not improving in a vacuum and end up bringing other areas up. Does it make sense? And so you'll get better momentum from a development perspective as a leader if you focus on something that you're good at and become amazing at it. Now, with that said, that same school of thought will say, if there's leadership traits that are quote unquote toxic, you have to address them. And I would say empathy, integrity, there's a couple elements that I think if like you're lacking in those, you got to shore them up. But let's say like as an example, I'm really thinking, I wish I had a really good example. Yeah, I can't think of a really good example. I can pull up some pillars later, actually, or maybe even another time. But the point is you will get better momentum in development if you focus on what you're already good at, because you already have a passion around it. And they use examples of like other leaders that are like, here's a perfect example, Steve Jobs. You could ask the general populace and people at Apple if Steve Jobs was an amazing leader, and people would say yes. But then you could also ask, say, well, was Steve Jobs like a complete jerk? And they'd be like, oh yeah, the guy was a jerk. Well, hold on. How is that possible? Right? Like that's a negative trait. Yeah, but he was so brilliant that people give passes in other areas. And so that's the school of thought around that idea.
See, and look, I take that scenario with Jobs, and I agree with that. You know, that assessment. Like, I'm not interested in being that kind of leader personally.
Yeah, especially one that's that way anyway. Yeah,
I'm not interested in that. Like, I'm interested in creating a big movement, an organization with what we're doing here, but I care about the individual too. And I care
Yeah.
about what goes on behind the business. Like, what's their personal life like, what they struggle with. Like, I'm interested in that. And that's the kind of leader I want to be. Could I be more effective as in growing this organization if I was more hard try? Maybe, I don't know, but I'm not interested in that. Like, I know what I want
Yeah.
and I want to serve people. I wrote down some things here that I think might help. I mean, there's the laundry list of items with regards to leadership. You know, initiative is one he mentioned, empathy is one I mentioned, integrity is one you mentioned, but there's a couple here that I think are a little outside the box. Number one is you have to be a great communicator. Steve Jobs was a great communicator. I'm a pretty good
Totally.
communicator. Like, anybody who leads effectively is going to communicate well. And it doesn't mean that there is one communication style. It means that they know how to take a message and deliver it in a way that's relevant to the person they're communicating with. That's all powerful communication is. And so you need to change it. If I'm talking with my 7-year-old, it's going to be different than the way, Kip, that I talk with you. So was the way I showed up for him. What if I showed up for you the way I showed up with him? Would that be effective communication? No, of course
No.
not. It'd be ridiculous. So we need to have the ability to adapt. Um, Number two, this one's a little outside the box. Optimism. I think leaders are optimistic. I don't think they're
Yeah.
unrealistic. I don't think they're pie in the sky people, but I think they're optimists.
Yeah.
I think that they believe
Yeah.
that
The
there's a
sky isn't
problem that
falling
can,
though either.
right.
Yeah.
There's a problem
Yeah.
that can be solved. There's a solution to this. There's a path forward.
Mhm.
Yes, it's hard right now, but if we do this work, then it will be better. Like, the leaders are optimists. Another one is they're problem solvers. They're not problem identifiers. Everybody's problem identifier. If you were to go ask 100 people, hey, what's wrong with society today? Everybody would have an answer.
Totally.
But if you ask the same people, okay, part two of the question, what should we do about it? Significantly fewer people would have an answer to that question. So leaders are
Totally.
problem solvers. They see the problems just like everybody else, but they see a path forward. And the last one I wrote here is humility, meaning they don't need to be the center of attention. They don't need to always be the one on stage. They don't need to be the one with the eyeballs on them all the time. Sometimes it's necessary because a leader, you need to cast vision, you need to inspire and motivate, you need to give direction. And sometimes it's necessary for you to get off of the stage so there's room on the stage for somebody else to stand. Like, you can't do that if you're filling up every single space of the leadership development and growth of others. We sometimes are the bottleneck. I've talked about that a lot within our organizations, Order Man and Iron Council, bottlenecks, bottlenecks, bottlenecks. What if I'm the bottleneck?
Yeah.
And what can I do to get myself out of the way to allow space for other people to come in and fulfill roles and duties and responsibilities and perhaps do a better job than even I could do myself?
Yeah. I think, just to latch on the last thing, is just servant leadership, man. Like, when we get to a point where it's not about us and we're creating opportunities for others, now you're a great leader. When people can say, hey, I'm in Ryan's circle and there's no doubt that, like, he wants the best for me, he's coaching, he's helping me, and that the intent of his leadership is to better me as an individual. Are you joking? Like, imagine that kind of relationship with your boss, where it's not like trust is here, but it's no longer trust. It is, they're there for you because they want to see you win and they want to support you in it. Man, like, if we can get to that level as leaders, I think it's profound. One last thought, Greg, and this isn't one of those traits, but this is one of the things to consider when you think about leadership, is we often look at our abilities, and I'd say a lot of your traits are thinking kind of in the space of abilities. And then we look at our effort and we'll go, oh, I got these abilities and I'm putting in effort. But the last thing that we consider is, what is your impact? And it is fully possible that you can be an amazing leader and bust your butt, but the impact is negative. And that maybe you're hitting numbers from a work perspective, but you are leaving a wake of disaster because you're not connected to the impact that you're leaving. And another way of saying the impact? Relationships. and what are we doing for other people? So don't lose sight of the impact. Yeah.
The only exception I would say, or the only issue I took with that, and I agree so much with you on that about the impact that you said you can be great, you can be a great leader and have the hard work and all that stuff, but if you don't have the impact, I'd argue that if you don't have the impact, you're not a great leader.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you're getting the short game, right? Like you might have success like at work, but it's short-lived because your support and those that you're leading are falling to the wayside, right? The analogy I always use is like, we're going to summit Everest. Awesome that you planted a flag, but is your whole crew dead because in the process of summiting, right? It's like, yeah, we don't want to summit and everyone's dead, right? Let's summit and everyone lives and we all make it down the mountain together.
I thought you brought up a good point too when you said when it's not about you. And so I wrote this question down, but how do you know when it's not about you? And here's what I would say. So this is how you can tell. This is a good litmus test for how you can tell if it's your leadership is not about you. And this is how your employees or your subordinates or your family members are going to know it's not about you. When they F up and you still have their back. That's how you know it's not about you. Because if one of your employees messes up and costs you 10 grand today and you lose your shit and you lose your mind and you demote them and you berate them and you make them feel guilty and horrible and you undermine them, it was about you. It was about the $10,000. It was about the bottom line. If, on the other hand, you put your arm around them and say, hey, look, you messed that one up. Like, that's a big problem. But you know what? All right, we got a problem on our hands. We have a problem on our hands. So what are we going to do about this? And I allow, let's say I'm talking to you, Kip. I allow you to come up with some solutions. I say, hey, yes, those are good solutions. Here's another thought. Here's another thought. Kip, look, I know how you must be feeling today. Look, I'm feeling it too. I'm angry. We just lost $10,000. I'm frustrated. That's going to hurt our bottom line and impact our ability to serve other customers. But I also want you to know stuff happens. And I think we can get through this. In fact, I'm so confident that we can get through it that after the end of our $10,000 loss, we'll actually be better off because we're going to learn new systems and procedures that are going to help us make more money down the road.
And we're going to grow from this. You're going to grow from this. I'm going to grow from this. Chalk it
How
up
much
to learning.
better do you feel?
Yeah.
Like, I wish I could say I was always that way. It's hard. It's hard when things go south, but that's how you know. That's the way you know. What was it about? Was it about that person or was it about you and your bottom line? That's how you know.
Totally. Yeah. Good question. All right. Travis Neville, how do I help support a buddy that is in a toxic relationship with his girlfriend and her family? My friend has been in a relationship with his girl for 25 years. Sometimes, and it's getting worse. They fight constantly. It's about the smallest things, like he wore the wrong shoelaces. Not kidding. We were working out the other day and he has to call to wake her up at 2 p.m. and they fought because he was at the gym. He is a good guy, but he's the only person in his corner. I'm the only person in his corner. He has no family. So I feel like if he's hanging onto this broken relationship in hope of having a family again, the family doesn't respect him and treats him like crap. They control every aspect of his daughter's life. He constantly talks about how bad it is, but won't break away. How can I set boundaries with her? How can he set boundaries with her and the family and try to improve the situation, or is it a lost cause?
So
better yet, how does he have this relationship with his buddy? Right. I mean, that's the bigger.
Yeah. You're not going to like my answer. You've already done everything you can do. Like, I know you have. I know you have, because you're asking this question, which means you've tried other things and it's not working. Travis, brother, you've done enough. Anything that you do now might actually be inappropriate. Because he's not interested in it. So
he's unwilling to do the thing that's making him sick. Yeah.
Tell me this. When's the last time you appreciated being nagged about something that somebody already told you about? Even if they were right. Like, when's the last time you appreciated that, found value in that, acted on that, and felt better because you did it?
And changed your ways because of it. Yeah.
Never. You've already done everything that you can do. So just keep doing that. The hard part for men is that we want to experience results. We want to
Yeah.
change people. We want to see their growth and progress. You don't have control over that. And so the best thing, we talk about this all the time. This is the core of sovereignty. Doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And how do you know? Is that would you still do it if you knew that it wouldn't produce the results that you desired? Would you still be this guy's friend knowing that he's never going to implement the things that you're sharing with him that you know would positively impact his life? Would you still do it? Yeah, I'd still be his friend. Then be his friend, because that's the right thing to do. He's done, man. He's done hearing about what you think. He's done hearing about the boundaries. And even if he isn't, he's not willing to implement it. The only exception to that is if at some point down the road he has enough and he comes to you because you've created a friendship with him and he said, Travis, man, you were telling me something last month and God, I just wasn't in the space to listen, but you were talking about boundaries. What was that again? That's a new opening for you to be able to have this continued conversation. But the ball's in his court. Don't go steal his basketball. He's the one who needs to make the shot. He's the one who needs to go play the game. You can't go over there and hog the ball. It's his game. So you can coach him and you can consult him and you can counsel him and you can befriend him and you can do all the things that you're doing right now. But at the end of the day, if he's not willing to do it, that's on him, not you. Congratulations to you for doing everything that you could. Now leave it alone. Just be a friend. Just invite him to the lake. Just invite him to dinner. Go on a hunt. Don't talk about his girlfriend anymore. Don't talk about all the things that he's doing wrong and what he should be doing. Talk about baseball. Talk about sports. Talk about hunting. Talk about lifting. He clearly cares about lifting. Talk about his next competition. That's it. And that's also really nice because now you can have a fun relationship with a guy.
Yeah.
And you might be his only outlet, his only reprieve from whatever else is going on in his life. And now he enjoys being around you, which is good. That's what you want. Because at some point, he may or may not come around and want to have some other conversations, but you've already had the conversations. Just stop now.
And him letting go of he's gonna have a better relationship with his buddy by letting go of those expectations of the way it should or should not be as well.
It's just a shitty answer because it's like, what do I want to do that produces results? You just can't.
Nothing.
But isn't that the answer
of the results? Yeah, it is. Well, and even if he did listen to you, guys, at the root of this entire comment that Ryan just said is the idea that there's a major difference between people taking action because they've outsourced their life to someone else. And I'm just going to do it because Ryan said so, versus someone finding the answer for themselves or coming to the conclusion on their own that they need to do something. There's a night and day difference of those two situations. And one will progress or one will give results. The other one, he'll take some actions. It won't go the way he wants it to go. Then he'll blame you that he listened to you. That's not how change is done. He has to figure it out for himself.
Yeah. I think about the analogy of lifting weights, and this might be helpful because this guy's fit, he's into fitness. If I went to the gym this morning and I took a before picture of me going to the gym, and then after I took an after picture, what do you think if that's what I was basing my performance on or me being active in the gym? Do you think I'd go back? No, I wouldn't go back.
Yeah. You're like,
because I didn't see any result.
That good.
I was like, I look the same. I'm sore. Yeah. That's the only difference between the before and afters. I'm sore
and tired.
Yeah. So I'm not going back. But what would a fitness guy tell you? Be like, no, just what should I do? You ask him, well, man, I didn't experience any results. What should I do? You should go back tomorrow. You could do that for a week. You could do that for a month. After a month, I think you'd start to see some progress. If you don't, you might be doing it wrong. But it takes a long time. And sometimes doing the right thing, the best course of action is, if you're doing the right thing, the best course of action is to keep doing the right thing. Even though you're not experiencing the result that you desire yet. You will. You will.
Yeah. Ryan Chambers, considering the current deterioration of traditional gender roles, what are some potential future challenges that you see for sovereign masculine men in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, well, I think it's more of the same. I think the biggest confusion that we're going to have is, or the biggest challenge we're going to have is confusion. We're going to be confused about what our role is. And we see that with feminism. You see men who want to
Yeah.
step up. You even hear women who are like, I like a strong, assertive, take charge kind of guy. And then you look at their man and they're not that kind of man because, you know, the woman's out in the workforce doing the things that she's doing and she's trying to be the man. It's like, okay, well, you say you want a strong, assertive man, but your actions speak otherwise. And you're going to see more and more of that. You're going to see these more and more women who are acting more like men, more men who are acting more like women, and neither are going to be fulfilled. Like we see the data, we see the numbers, we know how miserable people are. We know how miserable women are if they don't decide to have a family. These are generalities. I'm not saying there aren't exceptions, there are, but we see the numbers. We see the data for guys who don't feel like men. We see declining testosterone rates. We see depression and anxiety and suicide rates as high as they are for men, up to 4 to 5 times higher than that of women. Like these are serious problems. And so I don't think there's going to be new problems necessarily, but I think they're going to be exacerbated. And then I also think these problems are going to be perpetuated by governments who want to undermine what it means to be a man, who want to undermine what it means to be a woman. And then is there really any question why nobody's fulfilled? You took away half the equation. You took away 100% of the equation. Man plus woman equals fulfillment. And we continue to take those out of the equation. We conflate what a man is with a woman and vice versa. And then we expect this is going to create some sort of fulfillment and satisfaction in life. It's not. So the best thing a man can do is be a man so that we can create space, hold space, as we said earlier, for women to be women. If we can't fulfill those roles, then they are left believing, even if it's just perpetuated by governments and school institutions, that they have to do both roles. I mean, they can, but they're going to burn out really, really quickly. So we need to step up as men, strong, righteous, bold, capable, assertive protectors, providers, and presiders, so that the women in our lives have the space to be kind and lovely and empathetic and nurturing and supportive. Not that's not bad. I'm not saying that's bad. Some people interpret that as it is. This is a partnership. And when we both fulfill our responsibilities, both sexes tend to be happier.
George Sykes, how do you know when you're following God's will? As a 4-year recovering codependent, almost 1 year recovering alcoholic and addict, and a brand new Christian, I'm struggling with following God's will. I do not know what he wants from me, nor do I know how to know what he wants from me. And am I a mess on some days? Thanks, gentlemen. Love you all.
When you start to believe that you have things figured out, I would question whether or not I'm now relying on God. I've got this. I'm good at this. Man, I'm doing awesome. Look at me. Look how great I am. Oh, I'm successful. I'm thriving. Oh, I don't think we're following God's plan anymore. Because that isn't, he wants you to be humble
and grow.
He wants you to be meek. He wants you to, like you said, to grow. And you don't grow by believing you have everything figured out. So, George, if you're confused, you might actually, that might be a pretty good indicator you're following his plan. Like, I'm confused. I'm frustrated. I check in every day. I don't know if I'm on the right path. I'm trying to do good. I'm trying to follow his plan. Those are all positions of humility, which means that you're on the path. You are on the path. It doesn't always feel comfortable. And that's the hard thing. I mean, that's like anything, right? When you're on the path to business growth, there's a lot of painful lessons in there. When you're on the path to physical prowess and physical fitness, there's a lot of pain, like physically painful lessons in there that you have to work through, whether it's just general soreness from lifting, or maybe it's a potential injury that you're dealing with and trying to overcome. I've had plenty of both. So I would say that that's a pretty good indicator, that level of humility that you have, because it keeps you asking if you're on the right path. And as long as you're doing that, praying daily, reading scripture, coming to him with an open heart and a humble heart, and then approaching life not from the position of, but here I am to learn, Direct me. What should I do now? And then do
Totally.
it. And by the
And
way, also evaluate it too. Like you should evaluate. Hey, I did this thing. Here's the thing that I think Christians have, a lot of Christians get wrong. They pray for things. Like, give me things. God, give me success. Give me notoriety. Give me this. Give me, oh, I want this. Like, please help me have the money for this. Like, give me this. Like, oh, I'm in this tough situation at work. What should I do? Give me the answer. I don't think it works like that. I think you need to do your part. And your part is, here's how I try to pray. God, I'm in this tough spot. I went through this divorce with my wife, and my family is falling apart, and I'm struggling, and I'm on my knees, and I'm so lost. I'm so confused. I'm emotionally distraught. It's horrible. I never thought I would find myself in this position. What should I do? Yeah. No, that's not it. Here's what I think I should do. I've spent time thinking about what I should do, how I should approach it. Can you tell me, can you let me know, am I thinking this right? Like, help me understand if this is the right path for me. And then I try to stay in tune with the decision I made. God gave us agency, right? Like he gave us the ability to choose. Imagine that you give a gift to your child. You give your child a brand new set of Legos, and he never opens it. He never plays with it. He just leaves it somewhere packed on the shelf, and all it does is collect dust. How much did he honor that gift? How much did he appreciate that gift? He didn't at all. And so if you have free agency and free will and you're not exercising it, you're spitting in the face of God. He gave you that to use it. Like, you use your agency, make decisions. I have faith that you can make decisions. I trust that you can make good decisions with my guidance and my help and my support. So make freaking decisions. And then you can come back to me and ask if you're doing it right, and I will guide you. But you have the power to make decisions, and shame on us if we don't make those decisions and exercise our free will.
Totally. And I think if George, if there's a sense of like, man, you're paralyzed by paralysis, like you're over analyzing this and you're just like, I don't know. Well, what's God's plan? Period. Right. And get clear on the intent of what he would want, and then act in that direction, in that general direction of like, hey, back to what you're saying. What does he want? You to grow, try to serve other people.
Yes.
Right. So start in those areas, and you're going in the right direction, and then fine tune.
Anytime I get arrogant, I just know that I'm not following his path. I start to get too big for my britches. We hear the pride comes before the fall. Anytime you start to feel like that, you're deviating from the path. But if you're humble, I like that and test. You're open, I mean, that's pretty simple, right? And I think I'm not a biblical scholar, but that's a biblical principle, humility. And anytime you get overly confident and arrogant, you're on the wrong path, buddy. You better get off that path, or he'll bump you off that path if he needs to.
Yeah. Because the intent is for you to grow.
Yeah. Right. Which is where I'm at, Brandon, by the way, in my own life. Like, I was I didn't take myself off the path. I got bumped. I got, foot stomped off the path, like 300, like foot to the chest into the pit, stomped off the path. And, it's hard, but also there's a lot of growth happening right now. All right. What's next?
Brandon Bonner. My son is 3.5 years old and is becoming aggressive, hitting his little brother and his mom. He doesn't really try to hit me, but you can tell sometimes he wants to. As a father, what kind of strategies have you found that work with disciplining or discouraging young kids from being aggressive?
Bro, you fight him. Fight his ass.
Totally.
Of course,
fact, I was like, what, he hasn't hit you yet?
Of course he's trying to hit you. Of course he's trying to fight and kick people in the balls. Like, you need to fight him. I'm not saying beat the hell out of him. Okay. So please don't take that out of context. I'm saying jump on Amazon today and go buy yourself some mats. And 5:00 is father-son beat down WrestleMania every night, Monday through Friday.
Totally.
And then what you do in those moments is you teach him appropriate use of physicality. So if he's
Yep.
going to try to do this, he's
And
going
how
to
to
try to
check
punch
it.
you in the nuts. He's going to try to
Yep.
punch you in the nuts. And your response is, hey, we can be here and we can wrestle and we can play and we can fight. But when you do that, I'm not going to play with you. And then the next time he does it, you stop playing. You stop fighting him. Yep. And he's like, oh, I don't want that. Okay, I'll be better next time. If he tries to bite you or any of these things, like the terms he used, what was the last thing? How do I, what was like check this behavior?
Well, and this is the part, right? How do I strategies that work with this, with discouraging young kids from being aggressive?
Don't discourage it. Harness
totally
it.
Don't do it.
Harness it.
Yeah.
Especially for boys, because look, if you discourage it, it's not like, oh, I discouraged it. And now he's better. He's healed. No, it's all masked.
It's going to lash out. Yeah. And it's going to lash out in a different way.
He's going to go shoot up a mall or a school in 20 years. Okay. Like, don't discourage it. Encourage, foster, and harness it. And that's your job as a man and his dad. So go spend $200 or whatever it is and send me a picture. By the way, you're in the Iron Council. So you better send me a picture in the next couple of days of you and him on mats fighting. And if I don't see that, I'm going to be disappointed.
Yeah, getting him some gloves too. Like there's
totally.
Man. Yeah. Embrace it. It's great.
Yeah. It's like, don't,
it's
hey, totally don't hit your sister, but here's a punching bag. You can hit all you want.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you want to fight? Cool. Mats, 5 minutes. Be there. I'll see you there. And get punk. After it. Little punk, I'm going to throw down.
Brandon, if you haven't read The Boy Crisis, I would recommend that book. If you have a boy, a young boy, before he gets any older, read that book. Utilize that as some counsel for us on how we can show up powerfully for our boys.
Yeah, he has some interesting, and I think Jordan Peterson has referenced this data as well. The importance of rough and tumble play is the term they use, and how sons and daughters learn boundaries, learn a lot about social interactions through not telling them not to hit, but teaching them how to react in constructive environments.
Yeah, totally. All right, man. We got one more question. You want
to go one more? Let's do it. Yeah, let's get it done.
All right. Clayton Biden. Last week you mentioned online dating apps. See, we knew it was coming.
What's his last name? Biden?
Biden.
That's unfortunate.
Don't judge him.
Proceed.
Okay. What are some of your thoughts, opinions, challenges, and experiences regarding online dating versus meeting people face to face? Considering how the dating market has changed over the past 20 years, I believe many men today are afraid to approach people in real life and feel safer swiping away virtually. And then he asks, do you see any role of artificial intelligence or AI on dating app programs, blah, blah, blah.
Well, there's definitely less risk approaching, if you even want to call it that, approaching women online.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, because you don't have to deal with the consequence of getting rejected. I me's still a level of rejection, but it's not as significant as a woman saying, no, you can't have my phone number, you know?
Well, and I even think it could be better. Like, let me give you it this way. So if I'm excited about chatting with some chick online, and I don't, so don't read into this, but if I'm excited about chatting with some chick and I'm in the context of what we're talking about, then I'm going to and you're even pausing, right? Like it's not even immediate reply, right? It's like Ryan writes something and you wait 10 minutes and you reply back. It's like, of course I'm witty because I have 10 minutes to come up with a great response.
You're so smart and funny. And
so all the communication is going to be superior because there's all these massive gaps. I can imagine doing that face to face. You say something, then the person just sits there for 5 minutes. And then they say it, you're weird.
After you started another conversation.
But that's exactly what's happening, right? And so the conversation's always going to go how you want it to go, or you're going to read it in the context of where you want it to go, because you're adding meaning to the text, and everyone has all this time to prep the perfect response constantly. Yeah,
Well, okay,
it's
so
fascinating.
it is, but also there it's amazing too. Like it truly is
Yeah.
amazing. So I think
Oh,
about
it is
I'm
amazing.
I'm big into analogies, obviously, and so here's one for you. Imagine you're a builder and you want to build this big, beautiful home, and you've got a lot of business, and you're trying to build these homes. And so what do? You go out and you invest in a high-end air compressor and a nail gun, and you get the right tools, right? So let's take a nail gun. Beautiful. You get the two before, thunk, 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 and it's seamless. It doesn't exert very much energy. The nail is driven in on the first one. It's very efficient, very effective. It's good. Does that mean that you shouldn't know how to hammer a nail? Because sometimes you may not know how the nail gun, and you still should know
Yeah.
how to hammer a nail into a stud to create this home that you're trying to build. But just because it's available, or just because it might be easier, doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. I think you should use both. If you're in the dating
Yeah.
space, I mean, what greater way to test an approach by doing it online when there's zero risk at
Totally.
all?
Totally.
And so it's a great
Yeah.
way to test your approach with women in a non-threatening environment. I mean, there's no consequence to
Totally.
you for trying to approach a woman or strike up a conversation online like there is in person. So
Totally.
yeah, use
I
both, but
do.
also go ahead.
I was going to say, I remember someone making a comment once with you and I on this podcast. Maybe it was a question where some guy said, I can't remember the language they used, but they used some type of language that was like, they haven't met them yet. Like they were chatting up a girl online.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, hold on, guys. That's not a relationship. So let's be
No.
really clear. This is a great tool, but ultimately,
yeah, it should
you
drive
need to
to an
actually meet them.
actual
Yeah.
face-to-face thing. Yeah. But I would
Yeah.
say the same thing. So here's where a lot of men go wrong, I think, in dating is they have too high expectations, not for the women they want to date, but for the way that a thing will go. So if you approach a woman with the expectation that you're going to get a date with her and she's going to be your next wife, or maybe you'll get lucky and you'll get laid, and you put all these things in place that you want to have happen, it's going to create weirdness and awkwardness for you, which will naturally be communicated to her.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest is just drop the expectation. Like it's still, and again, I want to reiterate, I'm not saying the expectation of having a beautiful, lovely, kind, whatever you're, the woman that you're after. I'm not saying that. I'm saying of what will happen. And if you drop that, then you can just go have fun. So if you're in the grocery store and you're trying to figure out how to approach women, then you should try to make the gal in line at the grocery store laugh. Yeah. Like not to get her number, not to get a date, just see if you can make her laugh. Because if you can make her laugh, then well done. You know how to make a woman laugh from nothing to now she's laughing with you. Right. Or, you're at an encounter. I'm just trying to think of a scenario. Maybe there's a woman that she's like a customer service rep at the car dealership you got your car serviced at, or the DMV. That's even better example. The post office or the DMV. And she's miserable, of course, because all of them are miserable. So just see if you can get her to smile. Just see if you can say something like, hey, here's my goal day. Like, I'm going to see if I can do something or say something to get her to smile. And that's it. And if you do, you're like, oh, cool, that worked. And that builds a little bit of your confidence. When you're at the gym and you see an attractive woman, like, don't go hound her, but maybe there is something that you can say like, oh, excuse me, are you using this bench? I see some weights. But clearly she's not using it, right? Because she's over there, but it's close enough where maybe she could, but it also gives you an opportunity to say something to her. Just say that. Hey, I know you're over here, but were you using this too? And she's going to say, oh, no. Say, okay, cool. Thanks. That's a little win. Now you communicated with her. You striked up a conversation from nothing and you created an opportunity for yourself. So we have to drop those expectations of what could happen. And by the way, you should also, if you're trying to date women, you should also talk to ugly women, because you don't care if an ugly woman responds to you the way that you want them to respond, but it will help you improve your ability to talk with women.
The pressure's not as high. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So
funny.
You should talk with everybody, guys too. And I'm not saying you're gay. I'm saying that learn how to approach people, learn how to communicate with people, because if you can do it with a dude or you can do it with an ugly woman, then it's going to be easier when you see that attractive woman you'd really like to take on a date.
Yeah, that's funny. Here's a challenge really quick. I read this. This is before TED Talks were TED Talks. This is I'm dating myself here. This is a long time ago. And I don't even remember who the speaker is, but if you Googled paradox of choice, there's this Google talk from this the neuroscientist, and he talks, or psychiatrist, that talks about there's always a paradox of choice. This is what I think is the challenge facing people nowadays with online dating. Before, you lived in a village and there was like 5 girls. And if you happen to date the one you liked, that was maybe the prettiest or the kindest or whatever, and you married her, your confidence in that selection was super high. But now, what's the possibilities for you? Millions globally. And so what happens is there's a paradox of when we had too many options available to us, we will question whether our choice was the right choice. That is the dilemma, because now it's, I'm going to marry my wife. The possibility of you going into that marriage with the idea that maybe she wasn't the best and there was better options or endless possibilities will alter the confidence that you have in the relationship. And here's the rub. Statistically, if your confidence is high during the courting process, that will determine more success in a marriage than any other thing.
Interesting.
Like momentum is really what it is. But if you go into it like statistically, like, it's, we'll make it work. Oh no. If your thought is I'll make it work or it will get better, look at that thought process, that it's not ideal. Right. It's not the ideal state, but we'll find a way. Oh, yeah. That's a disaster. So be very careful with this idea of I think it's going to statistically be more difficult for people to make lasting commitments because of the availability of options placed before them.
I don't know
what you do with it, but it's reality. It's the reality we live in. It's craziness.
Well, I think what you do with it is you use it to your advantage, knowing that you don't have to settle for somebody you're not excited about. I mean,
yeah,
there's how many women are on this planet,
confident.
And then, in the meantime, making yourself capable of attracting high quality, high value women, and you should focus on that. And you should focus on how to communicate with women and men and how to approach people and how to make people laugh, both women and men. This just isn't an issue. It's just not an issue if you're doing those. Exactly. Or maybe you are. I don't know. Whatever. But
I'm just joking.
You get the point. You get the point.
Awesome. All right. Should we
Let's
wrap it up?
Yeah. We went long today.
As always, join us online on Facebook at Order of Man, or at facebook.com/group/Order of Man, or connect with us, or even learn more about the Iron Council by going to orderofman.com. You can follow Mr. Mickler on Twitter and Instagram at Ryan Mickler, and you can visit the store as well. Any other call outs, maybe battle ready for you guys that are on the bench waiting for the Iron Council to open back up, go to orderofman.com/battle ready. And kick off your own process of getting those battle plans ironed out before you join us in the IC.
Yep, that's exactly right. Well, Kip, I appreciate you, man. Cool. Enjoy the remaining time that you have there. And guys, appreciate the questions. We will be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.